We are in Senior English B. And our objective now for the hour is to answer the simple question, what do we cover in Senior English B? I'll be working on the whiteboard some. You'll have a paper in front of you. You should have your textbook open to the table of contents. Now I want to point out something about this textbook. Your textbook divides itself into 2 volumes. Okay? The first volume, and you should be looking at your table of contents, will involve units 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead and flip really quickly through that to see that. Units 1, 2, and 3. Then notice units 4, 5, and 6. Okay? Now, are you ready for this? Senior English A covers units 1, 2, and 3. Senior English B covers units 4, 5, and 6. Now, your book is set up chronologically. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What'd you just call me? Chronologically. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means we're thinking about a timeline. Let's put that in our notes. That looks something like that. It's like being in math class all over again. Sorry about that. And you have an arbitrary 0 that you put at the top. Okay? The 0 point for Western timeline is the birth of Christ. Birth of Christ. Okay? Then we talk about events which are before the Common Era, BCE, and events that are what, Mr. Drollinger? Common Era, right? Or sometimes referred to as AD. Then we divide this line up into 100-year segments that we call what? Mr. Paulson, what do we call those? Centuries. That's right. 100-year segments, centuries. So, for example, we sit out here in 2013, which is what century? The 21st century. And by the way, that's how we write it, correct? 21ST with a big C around it, okay? The 21st century. So, this is kind of interesting. I mean, we remember last year, for example, as juniors, that Tommy and his pals said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Remember the Declaration of Independence. That document was published in what year? Does anybody remember? Junior year was a long time ago. That year was what year? Anyone remember? 1776. What century was that? Don't say it right. What century was 1776? Well, look up here. If I'm in 2013, I go up 1 number for the century. So if I'm in 1776, I'm in what century? The what? 18th century. And see, and I write it like that, don't I? Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, right? 1492, right? What century? What century is that? That's the 15th century. Now, can I say this out loud? Some students will say to Mr. McGee, why is it got to be so complicated? Seriously? 1776 is the 18th century? Why can't it just be the 17th century? I don't get it. It's hard for my brain to understand why it ain't the 17th century if it's 1776. The answer is simple. At 0, we start counting up, right? 50, 80, 98, 99, 100. That's the first century. 150, 180, 190, 199, 200. That's the second century, even though the numbers start with 100, right? Do you understand? So we're at 1776, which means we are in the 18th century. Of course, going backwards, we do the same thing. Roughly 399 BCE, Socrates dies. 200, we begin the rise of the Roman Empire. 410, Rome falls. Rome falls in 410. Whoa, what does that mean? Rome lasted how long? Roughly how long? 600 years. Yeah, 600 years of history, right? Okay. Now, I want to look at your textbook table of contents. Do it with me now. And notice Unit 1 begins with some important dates. The first date we're going to write down is the date 1000. Common Era. 1000. That's the date of the epic poem Beowulf. Okay, Beowulf. Do you see it in your book? It's right there, the table of contents. Notice that Unit 1 is called the Anglo-Saxon period. Anglo-Saxon, who are they? That's the first English people. That's the first British people, okay? Our next date that we're going to care about is 1600. Write it down. That's the age of the Renaissance. Look at Unit 2 if you want to know how to spell that word. Look at Unit 2 in your table of contents. Just flip a couple of pages. Right? The Renaissance. Shakespeare. Right? Hey guys, can you see something real quickly? If 1000 is the beginning of English history, and 1600 is when Shakespeare wrote Hamlet on the stage, we believe, for the first time. Can you understand why my English pals get really mad when Americans say America is the greatest civilization of all time? Here's why. Look at this. This is our beginning date. America is not even 300 years old yet. British people will point out that the time from Beowulf to Shakespeare is 600 years of history. England has 600 years of history just to get to Shakespeare. We haven't even hit 300 years yet. Lots of English people will point out, if you want to claim to be the greatest civilization in the history of the world, why don't you at least shoot for 400 years? When you get to year 400, though, you're still 200 years short of the history English people have to Shakespeare. There's clearly more dates coming, right? What are those dates? Well, notice these are easy round dates. 1700, this one we'll call the age of science or the age of reason. 1800, we'll call this the Romantic period. Okay, notice those are easy dates for us. Are you ready for this? The Romantics are Unit 4. Look at it in your table of contents. Unit 4 is where we begin Senior English B. Got me? So what we'll do together is to start at Senior English B and go forwards. Then in January, we'll come back and we'll start at Unit 1. Do you got it? Okay? There's some advantages, quite frankly, to studying Senior English this way. Some of the heaviest reading is in the first 3 units of our book. Lots of the poetry is in the last 3 units of our book. So you're going to see a lot shorter readings in Senior English B, but they're going to be poems that we're going to have to work with, okay? Which means we start right away with a time period that we call the Romantics. Now the obvious question of the quiz of tomorrow is, according to the readings on pages 714 to 730, what is a romantic? I'm not talking about a guy who buys his girl chocolates and flowers. That's a different use of the word romantic and romance. We're talking about something quite different. So, when you arrive tomorrow, are we out of time, right? Yeah. When we arrive tomorrow, we're going to begin with that question. Welcome to Senior English B.